Welcome to Ancient Relics Keeper, where forgotten civilizations, unexplained wonders, and ancient secrets come back to life. Ready to unravel the mystery? Let's begin the journey. Beneath the sacred domes of the Vatican, whispers persist of a library filled with forbidden knowledge. One legend speaks of a single terrifying book that can summon demons and make pacts with darkness, the Grand Grimoire. We will explore the chilling tale of this book and ask if the heart of Christianity could truly be hiding hell's ultimate instruction manual. In the vast, shadowy world of forbidden books, where whispered names like the Necronomicon evoke images of madness and cosmic horror, one text stands alone, not for the madness it brings, but for the cold, calculating power it promises. It is a book spoken of with a unique mixture of terror and awe, a manual so potent, so blasphemous, that it is considered by many to be the ultimate key to Hell's kingdom. This is the legend of the Grand Grimoire. Unlike other occult texts that might offer cryptic prophecies or charms for minor magical feats, the Grand Grimoire is said to be something far more direct and terrifying, an instruction manual. It is known by other, more sinister names, each one hinting at the darkness contained within its pages. Some call it the Red Dragon, a name that conjures images of apocalyptic beasts and infernal royalty. To others, it is simply the Gospel of Satan, a title that presents it as a direct perversion of Holy Scripture, a Bible for the damned. The legend insists that this is not a book of theory or philosophy. It is a practical guide, a step-by-step blueprint for summoning the most powerful demons in the infernal hierarchy, binding them to your will, and for the truly ambitious and utterly foolish, making a direct pact with the master of darkness himself, Lucifer. The physical description of the book in legend only adds to its mystique. It is often described as deceptively small, a volume that could easily be hidden away, its size belying the universe of damnation it holds. The binding is said to be of the deepest black or a blood-red leather, with some of the more gruesome tales insisting it was crafted from the skin of a disgraced priest or an executed heretic. The pages, yellowed with age, are said to be made from vellum, fine and durable, ready to withstand centuries of secret use. But it is the ink that is most disturbing. Legend claims the script was written in the blood of a fallen angel, or perhaps the blood of the author himself, given in a sacrificial rite to consecrate the work. When you hold the Grand Grimoire, the story goes, you are not just holding a book. You are holding a relic of pure evil, a key forged in the fires of hell, an object that hums with a silent, malevolent energy, waiting for a hand bold enough to turn its pages and a voice brave enough to speak its words aloud. This is the reputation that precedes it, a reputation that has made it the most sought-after and feared grimoire in the entire history of occultism. To understand the power attributed to the Grand Grimoire, one must first look to its mythical origin story, a tale that seeks to ground its dark magic in the deepest roots of ancient history and legend. The story begins not in the medieval darkness of Europe, but much further back, with one of the wisest and most powerful figures in all of religious lore, King Solomon. According to ancient legends, long before he was known for his wisdom in judging disputes, Solomon was a master magician. The stories, particularly those found in apocryphal texts like the Testament of Solomon, claim that he was given a magical ring by the archangel Michael. This ring gave him the power to command legions of demons. He did not fight them. He enslaved them. He forced these powerful entities, from minor imps to great dukes of hell, to construct his magnificent temple in Jerusalem. They were his supernatural workforce, bound to his will by the power of God, which he channeled through his ring and his sacred knowledge. After the temple was complete, the legend says Solomon recorded all of his secret knowledge. He wrote down the true names of the demons, their ranks, their specific powers, and most importantly, the exact words of power and the sacred rituals needed to bind and command them. He then locked this dangerous knowledge away, hiding it so that it would not fall into the hands of lesser men who might use it for selfish or evil purposes. For centuries, this ultimate repository of magical knowledge was believed to be lost to the world, a forgotten secret of a bygone age. This is where the legend of the Grand Grimoire truly begins. In the heart of the 16th century, a time of great upheaval, scientific discovery, and profound spiritual anxiety, the story names a specific author, a man whose identity is as mysterious as the book itself: Antonio Venetiana del Rabina. The name sounds Italian, and the legend places him in the year 1522. We know almost nothing about this Antonio. Was he a scholar, a disgraced priest, a member of a secret society? The legend is silent on the details, which only makes him a more compelling figure. He is presented as a man obsessed with power, someone who spent his life searching for the lost secrets of the ancients. His journey, as the myth tells it, led him on a quest to the Holy Land, to the very foundations of Solomon's temple. There, in a hidden crypt, buried deep beneath the earth, he is said to have discovered the original writings of the ancient king. It was the ultimate prize, the source code of all demonic magic. But Antonio, unlike Solomon, was not guided by a divine purpose. His motives were darker, driven by a thirst for knowledge that respected no boundaries. He spent years meticulously transcribing the ancient text, translating the arcane symbols and the powerful incantations. He was not just copying it, he was adapting it. Where Solomon used the power of God to command the demons for a holy purpose, the building of a temple, Antonio's version was different. He allegedly twisted the rituals, simplifying them just enough so that they could be used by those without Solomon's divine protection. He created a version of the magic that was more accessible, and therefore infinitely more dangerous. He was not just preserving ancient knowledge, he was weaponizing it. He was creating a grimoire not for a wise king, but for any ambitious individual willing to risk their soul for a taste of ultimate power. Upon completing his work, he named it the Grand Grimoire. According to the legend, the original manuscript, handwritten by Antonio himself, became an artifact of immense power, a direct link to the forbidden knowledge of Solomon, now repurposed for a darker, more personal age. This origin story is critical to the grimoire's fearsome reputation. By linking itself to King Solomon, the legend gives the book an air of ancient, undeniable authenticity. It suggests that its magic is not the invention of some medieval charlatan, but is rooted in a real, historical power that once commanded the very forces of hell. The true terror of the Grand Grimoire, however, lies not in its origin story, but in the explicit and detailed nature of its dark contents. The book is said to be divided into two main parts, each one a step deeper into the abyss. The first part is a detailed guide to preparing for the rituals. It is a testament to the idea that dealing with demonic forces is not a simple matter. It requires immense preparation, discipline, and the crafting of specific magical tools. The grimoire allegedly provides precise instructions for creating these items. There is the blasting rod, a wand made from the wood of a hazel tree, cut at a specific astrological time, and inscribed with powerful sigils. This is not a mere pointer. It is the magician's primary weapon, used to channel their will and enforce their commands upon the summoned entity. Then there is the magic circle, the Karsus circle, which is the magician's only defense. The book supposedly gives exact dimensions and the holy names that must be written along its perimeter. This circle is a fortress, a sacred space that the demon cannot cross as long as the magicians will remain strong. To step outside the circle before the ritual is complete means instant death or madness. The grimoire also details the required vestments, the ritual sacrifices, often a black hen or a young goat, and the specific incenses that must be burned to create the correct atmosphere and appease the spirits. Once the preparations are complete, the second part of the book unleashes its true purpose, the catalog of demons and the rituals to summon them. This is not just a list of names. It is presented as a complete field guide to the infernal court, a who's who of hell. The grimoire lays out the entire demonic hierarchy with chilling clarity. At the very top is the Emperor Lucifer, followed by his two chief subordinates, Beelzebub, the prince, and Astaroth, the Grand Duke. Below them are legions of other powerful spirits. Lucifuge Rophicael, the Prime Minister of Hell who controls all the world's wealth, Sargatanas, a brigadier general who can make a person invisible, and Nibiros, a field marshal who can reveal the future and inflict evil upon anyone the magician chooses. For each of these demons and dozens more, the grimoire is said to provide their personal sigil, a unique symbol that acts as their calling card, a direct line to their essence. The summoning rituals themselves are described in terrifying detail. They must be performed on a specific day of the week, at a specific hour of the night, usually between 11 and midnight. The magician, standing within the protective circle, must recite long, complex incantations, calling the demon by its true name, and using a mixture of demonic and divine names to exert control. This is one of the most fascinating and paradoxical aspects of the legend. The magician does not plead with the demon. They command it. They use the holy names of God Yahweh, Adonai Elohim's words of power, as spiritual weapons to force the demon into submission. It is a battle of wills fought on the edge of reality, where the magician uses the authority of heaven to control a denizen of hell. The grimoire supposedly contains the exact script for this confrontation, telling the magician what to say when the demon appears, how to state their demands, and how to dismiss the entity safely back to its own realm once its task is complete. The book warns that any mistake in the ritual, a single misspoken word or a moment of fear, can break the magician's control, with catastrophic consequences. The demon, now free, could attack the summoner, drive them insane, or drag their soul directly to hell. The climax of this section of the book is said to be the most daring and dangerous ritual of all, the summoning of Lucifer himself. This is the ultimate act of magical audacity, a direct confrontation with the fallen angel. The grimoire treats this not as an impossibility, but as the final graduation for the master magician, a ritual that promises knowledge and power beyond human comprehension, but at a risk that is almost absolute. And this leads to the final and most infamous part of the Grand Grimoire's legend, the ultimate price. While the book provides the tools to command demons, it is most famous for teaching its reader how to bypass servitude and enter into a direct partnership with the forces of darkness. It contains the precise instructions for making a demonic pact. This is the heart of the Faustian bargain, a theme that has haunted Western culture for centuries, and the grimoire is said to be its most practical textbook. The pact is a contract, a binding supernatural agreement. The terms are simple. The summoner asks for what they desire most: unlimited wealth, political power, the love of a specific person, forbidden knowledge, a long life, and in exchange, the demon gets what it desires most: a human soul. The grimoire, legend says, outlines this process without emotion, as a simple transaction. It details how the summoner must first call forth a high-ranking demon, often Lucifuge Rophicael, the gatekeeper of hell's treasures. The magician then states their demands clearly. The demon will then state its price. You will give yourself to me in 20 years, to do with your body and soul as I please. The ritual for sealing the pact is a chilling act of personal sacrifice. The magician must take a small piece of parchment and write the agreement, listing their demands and their promise of eternal servitude. But they cannot use ordinary ink. They must write it in their own blood, taken from their left arm. This act of signing in blood is symbolic. It infuses the contract with the life force, the very essence of the individual, making it eternally binding. Once the pact is signed, the magician gives it to the demon, who then vanishes, leaving behind a sign that the deal has been accepted. From that moment on, the magician's wishes are granted. Riches appear, enemies fall, desired lovers become infatuated. For a time, the person lives a life of unparalleled success and pleasure. But the clock is always ticking. The Grimoire is said to offer no loopholes, no clever ways to trick the devil. The deal is absolute. As the years pass, a creeping dread begins to replace the joy. The magician is haunted by the knowledge of their approaching damnation. When the 20 years are up, the demon returns to collect its payment. There is no escape. The soul is forfeit, dragged from the world of the living to an eternity of torment. This is the final lesson of the Grand Grimoire. It offers the keys to the kingdom, but the kingdom is hell. It promises the world, but the price is eternity. This terrifying promise, this ultimate gamble, is what cements the Grimoire's reputation as the most dangerous book ever conceived. It presents a world where power is real, magic is functional, and the devil is always waiting to make a deal, with the terms written clearly for anyone brave or foolish enough to read them. To even begin to ask whether the Vatican might be hiding a book as infamous as the Grand Grimoire, we first have to journey inside the walls of Vatican City itself, past the throngs of tourists in St. Peter's Square, beyond the breathtaking art of the Sistine Chapel, and into a place that is, for many, the most mysterious and secretive location on Earth. It is a place whose very name seems to drip with conspiracy. The Vatican's Secret Archives. The official name in Latin, Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticanum, immediately sets the imagination running wild. The word secret seems to confirm every suspicion. But historians are quick to point out that the Latin word secretum doesn't mean secret in the modern clandestine sense. A more accurate translation is private. These are the Pope's private archives, a personal collection of documents and correspondence belonging to the Holy See, not intended for public viewing. Yet, this small linguistic distinction has done almost nothing to quell centuries of speculation. In fact, it has only fueled the fire, because a private collection belonging to one of the oldest, wealthiest, and most powerful institutions in human history is bound to be filled with items that could shake the world to its very foundations. The reality of the archives is almost as staggering as the legends. This is no dusty backroom filled with a few old scrolls. It is a colossal fortress of knowledge, a sprawling complex that houses an estimated 53 miles of shelving. If you were to line up all the documents end to end, they would stretch from Rome to Paris. The collection contains papers dating back more than 12 centuries, a continuous record of history as seen from the very heart of Western civilization. Inside this labyrinth of paper and parchment are some of the most significant documents in history, items that we know for a fact are there. There is the papal bull from 1054 that led to the Great Schism, the formal split between the Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. There are the personal letters of Michelangelo, complaining about the payment for his work on the Sistine Chapel. There is a letter from Mary, Queen of Scots, written just days before her execution, pleading with the Pope to save her life. There are the complete, detailed records from the trial of the Knights Templar in the 14th century, a 7-year investigation that led to the brutal dissolution of one of the most powerful military orders of the Middle Ages. There's the Pope's decree excommunicating Martin Luther, the act that formally triggered the Protestant Reformation. And of course, there are the records from the trial of Galileo Galilei, the astronomer who was condemned for daring to suggest that the Earth revolved around the Sun, a direct challenge to the Church's view of the cosmos. These are just the items we know about, the ones that have been made available to a select few scholars. Access to the archives is notoriously difficult to obtain. It is not a library where one can simply browse the shelves. Scholars, typically those with advanced degrees, must apply for credentials. Even if they are approved, they can only request up to 3 specific documents per day, and they must know exactly what they are looking for. The catalogs themselves are complex and, in some cases, incomplete. Furthermore, there is a strict 75-year rule, meaning that documents are generally kept sealed from public view for 3/4 of a century to protect diplomatic and personal information. All of these rules, while understandable from an archival perspective, create an impenetrable wall of secrecy. They foster an atmosphere where anything seems possible. If it takes this much effort to see a letter from a long-dead king, what else must be hidden in the deeper, more restricted sections? What lies in the uncatalogued vaults, far from the eyes of even the most trusted academics? It is this very secrecy, this carefully managed control over history, that has turned the Vatican's secret archives from a historical repository into a star player in the world of conspiracy, the perfect breeding ground for tales of incredible and forbidden knowledge. It is out of this fertile ground of secrecy and speculation that the truly wild rumors have grown, and they are as varied as they are sensational. For centuries, people have wondered what earth-shattering secrets the Church might be hiding, not just to protect privacy, but to protect its own power and doctrine. One of the most enduring and plausible categories of rumors revolves around lost Gospels and alternative Christian histories. The discovery of the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt in 1945 proved that early Christianity was far more diverse than we ever imagined. Dozens of alternative Gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Philip, presented a very different picture of Jesus and his teachings. This discovery proved that texts outside the official New Testament canon did exist. The logical question that follows is, did the Vatican find other, even more controversial texts first, and then deliberately hide them? Rumors persist of a hidden Gospel of Mary Magdalene that portrays her not as a repentant sinner, but as Jesus' closest disciple and chosen successor. Others whisper of texts that claim Jesus was married and had children, a bloodline that would completely upend the concept of a celibate priesthood and the very structure of the Church. Hiding such a document would not be an act of historical preservation, it would be an act of institutional survival. From there, the theories spiral into even more fantastic territory. One of the most famous legends is that of the chronovisor, a device supposedly built in the 1950s by a team of scientists led by a Benedictine monk named Father Pellegrino Ernetti. The chronovisor was not a time machine in the traditional sense. It didn't transport a person through time. Instead, it was said to be a kind of time viewer. By tuning into the residual spiritual energy left behind by past events, the device could allegedly convert this energy into a moving image, allowing its users to watch historical events as if they were happening on a television screen. Father Ernetti claimed that he and his team, which supposedly included the famous physicist Enrico Fermi, had witnessed some of the most pivotal moments in history. He said they had watched Cicero give a speech in the Roman Senate, seen Napoleon at the height of his power, and most remarkably, witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. To prove it, a photograph of Jesus's face, supposedly taken from the chronovisor's screen, was published in an Italian magazine in 1972. The story became a global sensation. Though the photograph was later debunked as a modified image of a wood carving, the legend of the chronovisor lives on, a symbol of the ultimate historical secret, not a document, but a window into the past itself, a technology that the Vatican would undoubtedly classify as the most sensitive secret on Earth. And the rumors don't stop on our planet. Some theories claim the archives hold evidence of extraterrestrial contact. Proponents point to the Vatican's long-standing interest in astronomy. The Vatican Observatory is one of the oldest astronomical research institutions in the world, with facilities in Italy and Arizona. Why, the theorists ask, would the Church invest so much in looking at the stars unless they were looking for something specific? They point to comments from high-ranking Vatican officials, like Monsignor Corrado Balducci, a theologian and Vatican insider who, for years, spoke openly on Italian television about his belief that alien contact was not only possible but real. He argued that extraterrestrials were not demonic, and that believing in their existence did not contradict Catholic faith. These theories suggest that the Vatican has known about alien life for decades, perhaps even possessing physical evidence, like a crashed UFO or alien bodies, hidden deep within its vaults. The motive for secrecy would be clear. The revelation of intelligent life beyond Earth could trigger a global crisis of faith, challenging humanity's place as the special creation of God. But among all these tales of lost gospels, time viewers, and alien encounters. One category of forbidden knowledge is whispered about with a special kind of fear: the occult. This is the domain of black magic, of demonic summoning, and of books so spiritually dangerous that simply reading them could corrupt a person's soul. And in this dark library of the imagination, the Grand Grimoire is the most prized and feared volume of all. The question then becomes not just could the Vatican have such a book, but why would they want it? This is where the nature of the secret archives provides the perfect setting for this chilling conspiracy theory. If any institution on the planet had the motive, means, and opportunity to find and hide a book like the Grand Grimoire, it would be the Vatican. Let's consider the motive first. For most of its history, the Catholic Church has been engaged in a relentless war against heresy and what it considered demonic influence. It was a spiritual battle fought with very real-world consequences. For 400 years, from 1559 to 1966, the Vatican maintained the Index Librorum Prohibitorum Index of forbidden books. This was an official list of publications that the Church deemed heretical, immoral, or dangerous to the faith of its followers. Catholics were forbidden from reading them under pain of excommunication. The list included the works of great scientists like Copernicus and philosophers like Voltaire. It goes without saying that a grimoire dedicated to summoning demons and making pacts with the devil would have been at the very top of this list. During periods like the Inquisition, church agents were actively tasked with seeking out and confiscating such texts. But what happened to them? While many were publicly burned to make a statement, it's hard to believe that an institution as old and as wise as the Church would simply destroy every piece of forbidden knowledge it came across. As the old saying goes, know thy enemy. A wise general does not burn the enemy's battle plans, he studies them. A wise doctor does not destroy a virus, he isolates it in a lab to develop a cure. From this perspective, the Vatican's motive for hiding the Grand Grimoire wouldn't necessarily be sinister. It could be seen as an act of profound responsibility, a form of spiritual quarantine. The Grand Grimoire, in this view, is the equivalent of a spiritual plague, and the Vatican Secret Archives is the ultimate biocontainment facility, the one place on Earth secure enough to hold it and prevent an outbreak. Then there are the means and the opportunity. The Vatican is not just a church. It is a sovereign state with a global intelligence network that is arguably second to none. For centuries, its web of priests, missionaries, bishops, and papal nuncios has stretched into every corner of the globe. If a book of immense power, a genuine artifact of the occult, were to surface anywhere in the world, from a forgotten monastery in the mountains of Ethiopia to a private library in Paris, who would be in the best position to hear about it first? The Church. And who would have the resources, both financial and political, to acquire it, whether through purchase, negotiation, or force? Again, the Church. Throughout history, countless private collections and monastic libraries have been absorbed by the Vatican. It's entirely plausible that during one of these acquisitions, a book like the Grand Grimoire was discovered among the other manuscripts and quietly transferred to the most secure section of the secret archives, its existence erased from any public record. The physical security of the Vatican itself provides the final piece of the puzzle. It is a walled city, protected by its own police force and the iconic Swiss Guard. The archives are buried deep within this fortress, protected by layers of security, reinforced doors, and a climate-controlled environment. It is the perfect prison for a book, a place where it could be hidden away for centuries, untouched and unseen by the outside world. And so, this brings us to the core of the conspiracy, the central tantalizing question. Let's assume for a moment that the legend is true. Let's imagine that somewhere in the 53 miles of shelving, perhaps in a lead-lined box in a sub-basement vault, the original Grand Grimoire lies in silent darkness. What would the Vatican actually do with it? Why keep it at all? This is where the theory splits into two very different and equally compelling paths. The first is the path of the benevolent guardian. On this path, the Church is protecting humanity from a power it cannot hope to control. They are the wardens of a demonic secret, bearing the spiritual burden of its existence, so that the rest of the world can live in blissful ignorance. The book is too dangerous to destroy. Legend says it cannot be burned and too dangerous to be left in the world, where it could fall into the hands of a madman or a would-be dictator. So, the Church does the only thing it can: it locks it away. The Pope himself becomes the ultimate warden of this supernatural prison. In this version of the story, the Vatican is a silent hero, performing a thankless, terrifying task for the good of all humankind. But there is a second, much darker path. This is the path of the secret scholar. On this path, the Vatican is not just hiding the book, it is studying it. It is using it. But for what purpose? The most reasonable explanation within this darker theory is that they use it for defense. This is the know thy enemy argument taken to its ultimate conclusion. The Church has a long-standing tradition of exorcism, the ritual of expelling demons from a possessed person. An exorcist is a spiritual soldier going into battle against the forces of hell. How can you train a soldier without teaching them about the enemy's weapons, tactics, and command structure? The Grand Grimoire, as the supposed ultimate guide to the demonic hierarchy, would be the most valuable intelligence document imaginable. The Church's top exorcists could study its rituals not to perform them, but to understand them, to dissect their power, and to develop more effective counter-rituals and prayers. They would use hell's instruction manual to build a stronger divine defense. It would be a dangerous game, studying the darkness without being consumed by it, but one that the Church might deem necessary in its eternal war against evil. However, the conspiracy goes one level deeper, into a place of profound moral ambiguity and outright fear. What if the Church is not just studying the grimoire for defense? What if they are using its knowledge for their own purposes? This theory suggests that the highest echelons of the Vatican might be engaging with these demonic forces to maintain their own power. Perhaps they use the book's divinatory rituals to see the future, to anticipate political shifts, and to stay one step ahead of their enemies. Perhaps they use its influence to subtly shape world events, ensuring the continued prominence of the Church in a secularizing world. This is the most chilling possibility of all, that the institution that presents itself as the world's primary shield against the devil is, in fact, in quiet communication with him. It suggests a level of hypocrisy so vast it is almost unimaginable. A secret partnership between the holiest of institutions and the most unholy of powers. It paints a picture of a Vatican that is not a fortress protecting humanity, but a laboratory, a place where the ultimate forbidden knowledge is not just stored, but actively explored. This is the question that lies at the heart of the legend, a question born from the impenetrable secrecy of the archives themselves. Is the Vatican guarding the gates of hell, or are they secretly trying to pick the lock? The idea that the Vatican, the very epicenter of the Christian faith, might be secretly holding onto the world's most infamous demonic text is a staggering claim. It's the kind of theory that seems, at first glance, to be pure fantasy, a story spun from the overactive imaginations of conspiracy theorists and novelists. But for those who believe this legend, the connection is not just a wild guess. They point to a trail of breadcrumbs, a series of claims and supposed pieces of evidence that, when woven together, create a compelling, if circumstantial, narrative. This narrative attempts to build a bridge between the hallowed halls of St. Peter's Basilica and the fire and brimstone pages of the Grand Grimoire. It's a case built not on hard proof, but on interpretation, historical rumor, and the potent logic of mythology itself. To understand how this connection is made, we have to look at these pieces of evidence one by one, to see how they form the pillars that support this extraordinary theory. The first pillar is perhaps the most mythical, but it is also the most powerful because it speaks to the very nature of the book itself. According to a central tenet of the Grimoire's legend, the book is more than just a collection of dangerous words. It is a cursed artifact, an object imbued with a supernatural resilience. The legend claims that the Grand Grimoire cannot be burned, It cannot be torn. It cannot be destroyed by any conventional means. It is said to be protected by the very demonic forces it describes, making it essentially indestructible to mortal hands. This single claim immediately creates a profound problem. If you are a person of faith, a king, or a priest in the Middle Ages, and you come into possession of this book, what do you do with it? You cannot get rid of it. You cannot unmake it. To throw it in the ocean would only mean that it might one day wash ashore. To bury it would only mean that someone might one day dig it up. The book, in this view, is a spiritual contagion, and its indestructible nature means it can never be truly eradicated. It can only be contained. This is where the Vatican enters the picture, not as a villain, but as a necessary solution. The theory posits that if the Grimoire is indestructible by man, then it can only be contained by a power greater than man, the power of God. And where on earth is the power of God believed to be most concentrated? The Vatican. More specifically, in the person of the Pope himself. According to Catholic doctrine, the Pope is the vicar of Christ on earth, a direct spiritual successor to the Apostle Peter. He holds a sacred office, blessed with the unique spiritual authority. The theory suggests that this divine authority acts as a kind of spiritual shield. While the Grimoire's dark energy might corrupt an ordinary person, the holy office of the papacy is strong enough to resist it. The Vatican, therefore, becomes the only logical place in the world to house such an artifact. It's not just a secure fortress of stone and guards. It's a spiritual fortress. The book would be kept in the deepest vault of the secret archives, not just behind a locked door, but behind a metaphysical barrier of faith. In this telling, the Pope becomes the world's secret warden, the guardian of a demonic prisoner. He and a select few within the Vatican are the only ones who know of its existence, bearing the terrible burden of this knowledge to protect the rest of humanity. This claim is incredibly powerful because it transforms the conspiracy from a simple story of hidden evil into a grand, tragic narrative of sacred duty. It suggests the Vatican isn't hiding the book out of malice, but out of a profound sense of responsibility. They are not co-conspirators with the devil. They are his jailers. This idea that the Grimoire is indestructible and can only be safely contained by the Pope's divine authority forms the foundational argument for why the book would, and indeed must, be in the Vatican. It's a claim that is impossible to prove or disprove, relying entirely on the supernatural logic of the legend itself, but it provides a compelling and almost heroic motive for the Church's alleged secrecy. The second pillar of evidence moves from the realm of mythology to a more practical, and arguably more cynical line of reasoning. This argument focuses on the Church's long and very real history of fighting demonic influence through the rite of exorcism. Exorcism is not a relic of the distant past. It is an active and officially sanctioned practice within the Catholic Church today. The Vatican holds regular training courses for priests from around the world, teaching them how to distinguish between genuine demonic possession and mental illness, and instructing them in the ancient rituals used to cast out evil spirits. For proponents of the Grimoire theory, this fact is a crucial piece of the puzzle. They argue that exorcism is a form of spiritual warfare, and no soldier can be sent into battle without a thorough understanding of the enemy. Imagine, they say, a young priest training to become an exorcist. He is taught the prayers, the blessings with holy water, and the use of the crucifix. But he is going up against entities that are ancient, cunning, and powerful. How can he possibly be prepared if he doesn't understand their nature? How can he fight a demon if he doesn't know its name, its rank, its specific weaknesses, and the tricks it might use to deceive him? This is where the Grand Grimoire becomes not just a forbidden text, but a vital intelligence document. As the supposed ultimate field guide to the demonic hierarchy, it would be the most valuable textbook an exorcist could ever hope to study. It would be the equivalent of the military's opposing force manual, a detailed analysis of the enemy's command structure, capabilities, and tactics. According to this theory, the Vatican keeps the Grimoire under lock and key, allowing only its most senior and spiritually fortified exorcists to access it. They would study its pages not to learn how to summon demons, but to learn how to defeat them. They would dissect the summoning rituals to understand how demonic pacts are formed, so they can better help those who have fallen into such traps. They would learn the true names of the demons listed in the book, because in the lore of exorcism, knowing a demon's true name gives the exorcist power over it. The Grimoire would be a restricted text, a piece of classified intelligence for the Church's spiritual special forces. This argument is compelling because it feels so logical. It aligns perfectly with the idea of the Church as a pragmatic institution engaged in a real, ongoing spiritual conflict. It suggests that possessing the Grimoire is not an act of heresy, but a necessary evil, a dangerous tool that must be studied in order to forge stronger divine weapons. It paints a picture of a Vatican that is not naive about the existence of evil, but is instead taking a strategic, clear-eyed approach to combating it, using the devil's own playbook against him. This pillar of the theory grounds the conspiracy in a real-world practice, making the Vatican's alleged possession of the book seem not only plausible, but strategically necessary. The third pillar takes us back into the mists of history, focusing on a specific and controversial figure who once sat on the papal throne. This is the story of Pope Sylvester II, a man whose life story has become a cornerstone of the claim that the papacy has a long dark history with black magic. Sylvester II was pope at the turn of the first millennium, from the year 999 to 1003. Before he became pope, he was known as Gerbert of Aurillac, and he was, by all accounts, one of the most brilliant minds of his age. In a time often referred to as the Dark Ages, Gerbert was a master of mathematics, astronomy, and mechanics. He is credited with reintroducing the abacus and the armillary sphere to Europe after studying in Spain, where he had access to the advanced knowledge of the Arab world. He was so intelligent, so far ahead of his contemporaries, that people struggled to understand him. And in an age of faith and superstition, what people cannot understand, they often attribute to the supernatural. Almost immediately, rumors began to circulate that Gerbert's genius was not his own. His enemies and detractors claimed that his knowledge was not the result of study, but of a pact with the devil. They whispered that during his time in Spain, he had not just studied mathematics, but had also delved into the forbidden arts of sorcery. The legends grew more elaborate over time. One popular story claimed that Gerbert had built a brazen head, a magical automaton that could answer any yes or no question and predict the future. This, his critics said, was a demonic oracle, powered by a captured spirit. Another, even more damning legend, told of how Gerbert had made a pact with a female demon named Mary Diana, who helped him rise through the ranks of the Church, all the way to the papacy itself, in exchange for his obedience. When he died in 1003, the stories took an even darker turn. One account claimed that on his deathbed, consumed with guilt, Sylvester II confessed to his pact and ordered that his body be cut into pieces and scattered, so that the demon could not claim his soul. While mainstream historians view these stories as nothing more than political smears, vicious rumors spread by his rivals to discredit a pope who was unusually intellectual and reform-minded. For conspiracy theorists, they are smoking gun evidence. They see the story of Pope Sylvester II as proof that the highest office in Christendom is not immune to the lure of dark magic. If one pope could allegedly make a pact with a demon to gain power, they ask, why not others? This historical rumor serves as a powerful precedent. It creates a narrative suggesting that the Vatican has a hidden tradition of engaging with the occult, a secret history that runs parallel to its public one. The story of Sylvester II is used to argue that the Church's interest in demonic texts might not be purely for defensive purposes. It hints at a deeper, more corrupt fascination with the power that these books promise. For believers in the Grimoire theory, Sylvester II is Exhibit A. He is the proof that the papacy has dabbled in darkness before, making it entirely plausible that his successors would continue this secret tradition. seeking out and hoarding the most powerful occult texts with the Grand Grimoire as their ultimate prize. His story provides a historical anchor for the conspiracy, transforming it from a modern fantasy into a secret that has been hiding in plain sight for over 1,000 years. The fourth and final pillar supporting the connection is perhaps the most straightforward, but it is also the most difficult to refute. It rests on a simple, undeniable fact. Not everything in the Vatican's secret archives is publicly known or catalogued. The sheer scale of the archive's 53 miles of shelving, with documents spanning 1,200 years, makes a complete and exhaustive inventory a nearly impossible task. While scholars have meticulously catalogued vast sections of the collection, there are still countless documents that remain unindexed and unexamined. Furthermore, the Vatican has full authority over what is and is not made available. They are under no obligation to reveal the full extent of their holdings. This creates what conspiracy theorists call a perfect pocket of denial. The Vatican can never definitively prove that it doesn't have the Grand Grimoire, because it can never produce a complete and verified inventory of every single item in its possession. Any official denial from the Vatican is immediately dismissed by believers as part of the cover-up. Of course they would deny it, they say. The absence of evidence is not seen as evidence of absence. Instead, it is interpreted as evidence of concealment. The uncatalogued sections of the archives become a kind of Area 51 for historical documents, a black box where anything could be hidden. Theorists claim that this is precisely where forbidden items like the grimoire would be kept, in a section so secret that its existence is known only to the Pope and a handful of his most trusted cardinals. They would not be listed in any index available to visiting scholars. They would be ghosts in the archival machine. This argument is powerful because it feeds on the inherent nature of secrecy itself. The less the Vatican reveals, the more people assume there is to hide. Every closed door and restricted section becomes proof that something explosive is being kept from the world. The missing inventory is the final catch-all piece of the puzzle. It allows the theorist to dismiss any lack of hard evidence as part of the conspiracy itself. It creates a self-sealing logic where the Vatican is guilty until proven innocent, an impossibility given that they can never fully open their books to the world. Together, these four pillars, the indestructible nature of the book, the practical needs of exorcism, the dark legend of Pope Sylvester II, and the convenient secrecy of the uncatalogued archives, form the foundation of the case connecting the Vatican to the Grand Grimoire. It is a case built on myth, strategic logic, historical rumor, and the power of the unknown. While it may lack a single shred of concrete proof, it weaves a story that is so internally consistent, so compelling, and so deeply intertwined with the very identity of the Vatican itself, that for many, it has become a truth far more interesting than reality. We have journeyed through a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, exploring a legend that connects the holiest institution on earth with the most unholy of books. We've seen how the myth of the Grand Grimoire's indestructibility makes the Vatican its only logical prison, how the practical needs of exorcism could make it a necessary evil, and how the dark rumors surrounding a long-dead pope provide a historical precedent for such a chilling secret. The case for the Vatican hiding the Grand Grimoire is intoxicating, a perfect tapestry of myth, logic, and conspiracy. But now we must step out of the shadows and into the cold, hard light of day. It is time to take this captivating legend and hold it up against the rigorous scrutiny of historical fact and academic analysis. It is time to separate the myth from the reality. And when we do, the grand, terrifying conspiracy begins to unravel, revealing a story that is, in its own way, just as fascinating a story about how a legend is born, how it grows, and why it holds such a powerful grip on our collective imagination. The first and most significant blow to the entire theory is a simple but devastating one. There is absolutely no historical evidence whatsoever that links the Vatican to the Grand Grimoire. Not a single credible document, not one verifiable eyewitness account. Not a whisper from a defecting priest or a deathbed confession from a cardinal has ever emerged to support this sensational claim. For a secret of this magnitude, one would expect some kind of leak over the centuries. The Vatican, for all its secrecy, is still a human institution, filled with people who have rivalries, crises of conscience, and moments of weakness. Throughout its long history, there have been scandals, leaks, and revelations about everything from financial corruption to political intrigue. Yet, on the subject of the Vatican possessing a master text of demonic magic, the historical record is utterly silent. Historians who have spent their entire careers poring over the accessible sections of the Vatican archives have never found any reference to it. The vast and detailed records of the Holy Office, the very body responsible for fighting heresy and dealing with matters of the occult during the Inquisition, contain no mention of acquiring or studying such a unique and powerful grimoire. While they contain countless records of interrogations of suspected witches and heretics, and condemnations of various magical practices, the specific, legendary Grand Grimoire is conspicuously absent. Furthermore, no respected historian, Catholic or secular, takes the claim seriously. They universally categorize it as a piece of modern folklore, a conspiracy theory that has more in common with pulp novels than with actual history. The story lives and breathes on the internet, in forums, and in sensationalist books, but it has no footing in the world of academic research. This absolute lack of evidence is the most fundamental problem for the theory. A conspiracy of this scale, maintained for 500 years without a single verifiable leak, stretches the bounds of credulity to their breaking point. It suggests that we are not dealing with a hidden historical fact, but with a powerful and self-sustaining myth. The second step in deconstructing this legend involves taking a closer look at the book itself. Not the mythical, indestructible artifact of legend, but the actual physical copies of the Grand Grimoire that exist today. And this is a crucial point. The Grand Grimoire is not a lost book. It is not a singular, unique manuscript hidden away from the world. You can find copies of it in major libraries, like the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, and in various private collections. You can even buy modern reprints of it online or in occult bookstores. When scholars and historians analyze these existing texts, they uncover a very different origin story from the one the legend tells. The legend claims the book was written in 1522 by a mysterious figure named Antonio Venetiana del Rabina, based on the ancient writings of King Solomon. This date and attribution are designed to give the book an air of Renaissance-era mystique and ancient authority. However, linguistic analysis and historical scholarship tell a very different story. Experts who have studied the language, the style of the writing, and the specific demons and rituals described in the book have concluded that it could not possibly have been written in the 16th century. The French in which it is written, the theological concepts it uses, and the structure of the rituals all point to a much later date. The scholarly consensus is that the Grand Grimoire was actually created in the late 18th or early 19th century, most likely in France. This places its origin not in the midst of the Renaissance, but in the aftermath of the French Revolution, a period of immense social and spiritual upheaval. This was a time when interest in spiritualism, secret societies like the Freemasons, and the occult was exploding across Europe. It was the age of mesmerism, of seances, and of a booming public appetite for all things mystical and supernatural. This historical context is key. The Grand Grimoire was not the product of a lone, Renaissance sorcerer who had discovered ancient secrets. It was most likely the product of a clever and opportunistic publisher in Paris, looking to capitalize on this popular trend. The book was a commercial product, designed to be sold to a curious public. The dramatic origin story, the link to King Solomon, the claim of being written in 1522, all of this was almost certainly a marketing ploy. A fictional backstory created to make the book seem more ancient, more authentic, and therefore more valuable. The author likely compiled the material from various other, less famous grimoires and occult sources that were circulating at the time, repackaging them into a single sensational volume with a catchy and terrifying title. The Grand Grimoire was not a unique key to hell. It was a piece of commercial entertainment, the 19th century equivalent of a blockbuster horror movie, promising thrills and forbidden power to anyone willing to pay the price. This revelation completely changes our understanding of the book. It is not an ancient, one-of-a-kind artifact. It is a relatively modern creation, a mass-produced text designed for a specific market. This immediately dismantles the central pillar of the Vatican conspiracy theory. Why would the Vatican go to extraordinary lengths to find and hide a book that was being printed and sold commercially in France? It would be like claiming that the Vatican has a secret vault containing the only copy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The idea is nonsensical. The book was already out in the world, available to anyone who wanted it. There was no one copy to hide. The existence of multiple, verifiable copies in libraries and collections outside the Vatican completely refutes the idea that the Church is hoarding the sole, original manuscript. The book they are accused of hiding is, in reality, not a lost artifact at all. The third step in this deconstruction is to examine the contents of the book with a critical eye. The legend portrays it as a genuinely powerful and effective manual for summoning demons. But is it? When occult scholars and modern practitioners have analyzed the rituals described in the Grand Grimoire, they often find them to be impractical, internally inconsistent, and filled with blind, deliberate errors or omissions designed to prevent the uninitiated from successfully performing the rituals. For example, the book calls for the creation of a blasting rod and other magical tools, but the instructions are often vague. It requires very specific, and often impossible, ingredients, such as the skin of an unbaptized child or a stone from a demon's nest. These are not practical instructions. They are literary devices designed to sound intimidating and mysterious. Furthermore, many of the rituals are incredibly dangerous to the supposed magician. They involve blood sacrifices and pacts that offer no loopholes and guarantee damnation. A truly functional grimoire, written by a practitioner for other practitioners, would likely include more safeguards, more protective measures, and more nuanced ways of dealing with spiritual entities. The Grand Grimoire, by contrast, reads more like a cautionary tale than a practical guide. It seems designed to frighten and titillate the reader rather than to provide a workable system of magic. The demons it lists are a hodgepodge of figures drawn from Christian demonology, Jewish folklore, and other mythological sources, thrown together for dramatic effect. The rituals themselves are often overly complex and theatrical, suggesting they were written for the imagination rather than for actual practice. Many occultists today view the Grand Grimoire with a degree of skepticism, considering it a piece of low magic, more folklore than a serious esoteric text. They see it as a book about making a pact with the devil, not a book that actually enables one to do so. In this light, the Vatican would have little reason to fear its power or to study its secrets. It wasn't a functional weapon of demonic warfare. It was a piece of dark fiction, a fantasy of power for the disenfranchised and the curious. So, if there is no historical evidence, if the book is a relatively modern commercial product, and if its contents are likely impractical fiction, then where did this powerful legend come from? Why does the story of the Vatican hiding the Grand Grimoire persist with such force? The final step in our analysis is to understand the power of the myth itself. The legend is not powerful because it is true. It is powerful because it is a perfect story. It is a narrative that taps into some of our deepest cultural anxieties and archetypes. It brings together two of the most potent symbols in the Western imagination: the ultimate holy institution and the ultimate unholy book. First, consider the symbol of the Vatican. For centuries, it has been seen as a place of immense power, wealth, and most importantly, secrecy. Its high walls, its guarded archives, and its long history of political influence make it the ideal subject for a conspiracy theory. We are naturally suspicious of concentrated power, And we assume that those who have it must also have secrets. The Vatican is the ultimate black box. We know something is inside, but we don't know what. So our imagination fills in the blanks with our greatest hopes and fears. Second, consider the symbol of the forbidden book. The idea of a text that holds dangerous, world-altering knowledge is an ancient and enduring archetype. It's the apple from the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. It's Pandora's box. It's the Necronomicon in the stories of H.P. Lovecraft. We are fascinated by the idea that enlightenment and destruction can be found within the pages of a single volume. The Grand Grimoire is the perfect embodiment of this fantasy. It promises not just knowledge, but the power to command spirits, to control your destiny, and to deal directly with the master of the universe's shadow government. When you combine these two powerful symbols, you get a story that is almost impossible to resist. The tale of the Vatican hiding the Grand Grimoire is a clash of titans fought in the shadows of history. It's a narrative that contains everything a great story needs: mystery, power, danger, and a deep sense of moral ambiguity. Is the Church a heroic guardian protecting us from evil, or a hypocritical institution secretly using that evil for its own ends? The story allows you to believe either or both. It is this narrative power, not factual accuracy, that has allowed the legend to flourish. It has been kept alive and embellished by occult writers of the 19th and 20th centuries, by filmmakers, by novelists, and now by the viral nature of the internet, where it is shared and retold, each time gaining a little more detail, a little more conviction. In the end, the truth about the Grand Grimoire is not about a physical book hidden in a vault. It is about the power of a story. The legend persists not because there is any evidence for it, but because we want it to be true. It confirms our suspicions about power, it excites our imagination with tales of forbidden magic, and it gives us a grand, epic mystery to ponder. The reality is far more mundane. A commercially produced book of occult fiction from the 19th century. But the myth is eternal. It is a reminder that sometimes, the stories we tell ourselves about the secrets hidden in the dark are far more powerful than the secrets themselves. In the end, the tale of the Vatican hiding the Grand Grimoire is less about a physical book and more about our fascination with secrets. The legend lives on not because it's true, but because it represents the ultimate hidden knowledge, a powerful story of light guarding a terrifying darkness. If the past still whispers to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ancient Relics Keeper, because some mysteries were never meant to be buried.